And so yet another installment into the hidden history of the African American fighting man. There's been a much to do about patriotism as of late, particularly of African Americans. Take a listen to this, going back to World War I. It was April 1917 that the War Department of this country quickly realized that the standing army of 126,000 men was not enough. You see, World War I had broken out. We only had 126,000 men capable of going to war. So the standard volunteer system was being used, but by May of 1917, Congress passed what is now called the Selective Service Act. It required all males between the ages of 21 and 31 to register for the draft. Now that has changed to 18. Now, even before the act, listen closely, African American males from all over the country were eagerly joining the war effort. They viewed the conflict as an opportunity to demonstrate loyalty, patriotism, and worthiness. There's always this, there's always that bigot out there who is suggesting that somehow or another African Americans can't fight. And who's been fighting more than African Americans? It's just amazing, even then. However, trust me on this, there were so many African Americans rushing in to join that the War Department got a little bit taken aback because they had fulfilled their quota. Within 1 week of Wilson's declaration of war in World War I, the War Department stopped accepting African American volunteers because the quotas of African Americans were filled. Hey, we got too many. Man, all these brothers coming in here wanting to get a gun. What can we do? It's 1917. We can't have that. I mean, how we gonna maintain Jim Crow and all these brothers coming in here getting these guns? You heard me right. Quotas. I think Ronald Reagan would have been very pleased. There was much ado about the quotas during the affirmative action pursuits. So African Americans, I've yet to find out what was the quota. Ro, continue to see if you could search for the quota. How many African Americans were too many? When it came to the draft, however, there was a reversal of in the usual discriminatory policies. Draft boards were comprised primarily of Caucasian males. Although there were no specific segregation provisions outlined in the draft legislation, African Americans were told to tear off one corner of their registration cards so they could be easily identified and inducted separately. One Georgia County exemption board discharged 44% of Caucasian registrants on physical grounds and exempted only 3% of African Americans on the same grounds. There was an eagerness in the South, particularly, to draft African Americans. It was fairly common for Southern postal workers to deliberately withhold the registration cards of eligible African American men and have them arrested for being draft dodgers. You heard me right. African American men who owned their own farms, had families, and had families were often drafted before single Caucasian employees were drafted. Although comprising just 10% of the entire United States population, African Americans supplied 13% of the draftees during World War I. Just thought you should know. So when you find some of those African American men taking a knee, is not a matter of their patriotism, I can tell you that, because as to granddaddies. Which brings me to this, folks. We've heard from Colin Kaepernick. But before I get there, I need to let you know, I went to the Superdome yesterday, and go ahead and get the music ready, because I know my friends listening on Facebook won't hear it. But we're going to play the Saints song, I can tell you that right now. What? I don't know if they could hear that. Can they hear that? Yes, no? I can hear in the back, yeah. Yin Yang Twins. It's called Halftime. After every touchdown, they play this song in the Superdome. They played this song a lot yesterday. But I've got some observations about yesterday. I arrived there before the national anthem. And let me just tell you, folks. You know, some of you oxy-conservatives out there are really, really, you are falling for it. I mean, look, I don't know how to explain this. It's almost like a cult. Lim Bubba said something and you guys go, So I get there and, I mean, there were people there. Actually, I read somewhere that one guy said he's burning up his season ticket. What a dumb ball you are. You know, you can't untrain stupid. I can tell you that. I mean, you paid $300 for a pair of tickets, and you burn them up. That's just stupid. Now, I could have burned mine up. They said it's advertisement. In other words, my being there is I'm part of the press. Put it that way. But I wouldn't dare. Are you kidding me? Oh, I'm not going to sell them. I'm going to burn them up. I'm going to show I'm down with the NFL. You're just stupid. That's just stupid. And it is, folks. I mean, you want to debate with me about how stupid you are, please call me. Yeah, just call me, because I'll let you go ahead and... I won't even respond just to show how stupid you really are. You burn up your tickets. Burn up your ticket. Oh, I'm not going to watch. And it's so interesting because when they began to sing the national anthem, I stood, as usual, and, took my hat off over my chest, as I've always done, thought the thoughts I always have. First and foremost, the Saints all took a knee before the national anthem. Here you go. Here these yahoos. Oh, get up, you lazy bums. Blip, 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 blip. And this is before the national anthem. These are the folks who come there to watch mostly African Americans on the Saints team participating. You know what I thought about, Ro? I thought about Django. I thought about this part in Django, for those who've watched it, where you have where they're having the Mandingos type guys fight. Remember that when it first came in? Candy, Monsieur Candy was sitting there on the couch, sofa. And you have these two brawny African-American men fighting themselves. All of them barely clad, only wearing short, ragged pants. They're pulverizing each other. Yeah, right in front of the fireplace. And then you see their dark, sweaty bodies just... And I mean, it's just brutal. I mean, the blood, the gore. And I thought to myself, that's what this is all about to some people. They're watching these athletes, brawny, particularly African Americans, pulverize themselves for their amusement. And for the person who would keep sending me this N, you know what the N in NFL stands for, don't you? Rip, ha ha, he he. Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine with folks like you who would basically anonymously send a little cool note. I got you. But I sit there and I watch. This is how they see this. They see these individuals out there risking life and limb. I mean, God, the quarterback just broke his collarbone, clavicle. And I say to myself, this is what this means to them. And if it were me and I'm on the field, granted, I'm getting paid to be out there. I think I'd feel a little bit odd being a gladiator for this bunch. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to. I don't know if you could pay me enough nowadays. By the way, some things not for sale. A lot of things for me are not for sale. But I sit there and I heard these folks. I mean, it was really quite boisterous. Oh, yeah, get up here. Yeah, you light up, your SOBs, get up. Oh, it was. Then, of course, this woman started singing the national anthem. They all stood up. Yay! I thought to myself, is it really that important to you? Really? What another American does is that important to you? And then you have these guys looking over at me. Oh, what if he's going to do this? Went down to get myself a nice drink. Someone says, I want to thank you for standing up. I didn't do it for you, you idiot. I said to them, thank me. You don't thank me. You can thank my daddy, the proud African-American man who couldn't wear his uniform because it was against the law in Mississippi. Thank him. Did you thank him before he passed at 98 years old? You know, this kind of litmus test that some arrogant, maybe you've been watching too much Saving Private Ryan to really understand what I just shared with you regarding African Americans flocking to the selective service system, flocking to join World War I. World War II, let me just tell you, folks, they were overrun in Mississippi. Overrun with African Americans joining. Same thing in the Revolutionary War, same thing in the Civil War. You can get over yourself and your bigotries. I'll settle down, I'm sorry. But I thought the nerve of this person. This is a nice little lady. I hated to be rude. I looked her up and down and went, who are you talking to? I could only imagine she didn't have a clue. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong? I just thanked him. Thank me for standing up. As if what? Somehow or another this is now important to you? Under any of the ordinary circumstances, had Donald John said absolutely positively nothing, you would have still been eating your popcorn. Look, I was there. I know this was no big deal. This was no big deal. No one stopped, per se. You could still hear the guy going, cold beer? Give me a bullet. I mean, it was not unusual. I mean, I always stood because that's how I was taught in my segregated school, I might add. My teachers insisted on that, you see. But anyway, I really wonder whether or not, going forward in this whole thing, there will be lessons learned. First lesson for me. This country was founded on the consent of the governed. You know what that means? That means I give my consent to be governed. It was not, there was no order. The consent of the governed is a very important thing. In other words, you don't have a democracy where you don't have the consent of the governed. We give our consent every time we vote. We give our consent every time those who represent us vote. Government doesn't move without the consent of the governed. You got me? We are the governed, and that's the government. And when you have a consent of the governed, the opposite side of that is dissent. Right? There are those who will dissent with the government. In a free society like ours, that's Kaepernick. He's showing some dissent, some dissension. In a free society, that is as much protected as the consent. Seems to me that there's some who didn't have World Civ or didn't have Political Science 101. I had learned this when I was in the 5th grade too, by Mr. George Sutton, bless his heart. Still driving his trucks. And so, when someone stands, sits, rolls over, whatever, that's not an example of their entire consent. I mean, you got a guy who has no legs that may not stand. You got folks who are religious and see that as contrary to their religious beliefs. Who are you to ask? So I just, I sat there and I wondered what kind of arena I was in here, and whether I was in fact joining with Candy, whether I was the one-eyed Jack as Django was presented, and sitting there drinking my mint julep while two African Americans pulverized each other. Only the loser then is hit in the head with a hammer. And for that, we all rejoiced. It was that reason also, and besides the fact the Saints were leading that I left at halftime. After watching Talladega. After watching the Talladega, man, oh, they did excellent. Did great. Hopefully they'll be here on the coast for MLK. So, folks, even that to me was so ironic. It was so ironic. Actually, the woman singing was actually an African American. Harper was the honoree, the NFL, the Saints honoree there. African American. And I wonder whether or not there are some of us or some of you who spend too much time trying to convince people who are unworthy of your convincing that you are what you are, trying to be accepted by every white face you see, in quotes, when some of them are not deserving, to be quite frank. So that was my foray yesterday, only to leave there and go to work big time. Which brings me to this. Where is it? I know this is going to be in reverse. This is the Kaepernick. Can you see this? There you go. See that right now? Well, it's reverse. You won't be able to tell. This is the in the matter of arbitration, Colin Kaepernick versus the National Football League. That's what the N stands for. Contrary to what the coward says. It starts off this way. Section 1 states, no club, its employees, or agents shall enter into any agreement, express or implied, with the NFL or any other club, its employees, or agents to restrict or limit individual club decisions making as follows. And it goes on to spell out whether to negotiate or not negotiate with any player, blah, 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 blah. And all of this is because Colin Kaepernick, along with his counsel, is saying that the NFL, they collaborated and colluded to keep him off the football field. So, and there is express laws, rules, should I say, within the NFL, which is why I said arbitration. This is filed as an arbitration. It has legal standing, but it's arbitrating. They go before the arbitrators and decide whether or not Colin Kaepernick has a point. And the point is, he spells out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 20. He's got 20 points here. Violation of collective bargaining agreement, anti-collusion. It spells it all the way out as to what the NFL is being charged with. Proof of service, and it goes through and it listed everything. The Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, all of them. All of them. Indianapolis Colts. It doesn't have the Saints down here, I don't see. Hang on, I want to make sure. Oh, yeah, it's all of them. It is all of them. Yeah. In other words, he is suggesting that not one NFL team sought to hire him. And so, therefore, they must have colluded and put him on the blacklist. Come to think of it, I don't see New Orleans. Do you have the list over there, Ro? Am I looking over it? I could very well do it, but I do not see New Orleans on this list. I really don't. Yeah, it is. New Orleans, number 28. So there's 34. Is there 34 teams? Some of you NFL strategists or statisticians would know. There's 34 teams, all 34. Just 32, and so therefore the other ones is this. He serviced the process to the National Football League, Players Association, and the council itself. Okay, there it is. That makes up all of it. So yeah, so everybody was serviced the process. So he is suing all of the teams, including the National Football League. What is he asking for? You want to guess? His job back, money, millions. The money that he could have made if he'd working. Where it comes down to number 19. The claimant Colin Kaepernick requests all relief permitted by Article 17 of the CBA. I don't have the CBA over here. Get the CBA. And then number 20 is, based on the public statements made by the NFL owners and the NFL Commissioner Goodell regarding the foregoing matters, claimant Colin Kaepernick respectfully requests that the NFL and its team owners waive such confidentiality requirements as may exist under Article 15, Section 10, and permit all proceedings to be presumptively open to the public. So he wants a public display of what the NFL owners did or did not do, which is right now confidential. So he wants Article 15, which maintains this confidentiality. I doubt if he's going to get that. But he wants all relief. That could include monies he could or could not have made. Oh, here it is. Here's Article 17. Where's Article 15 here? No, I don't have it. All right, folks. My comments about this. Colin, what took you so long? This is an employee issue here now. So now the guy who felt compelled to take a knee, because of his let's see, I think it actually spells it out here, because he was compelled regarding the number of shootings of African Americans, the unjust treatment of African Americans, is what fueled his taking a knee. I think it actually spells that out here. Please follow this. Okay. Oh, here it is, right here. Opted to stand during the national anthem in an effort to raise awareness. To not stand, I'm sorry. This is number 5. During the 2016 season, following numerous instances of police brutality against minority individuals, Mr. Kaepernick opted not to stand during the national anthem in an effort to raise awareness of racial inequity and minority oppression in the United States through a silent and peaceful protest of a nation that was not living up to its ideals or freedom and equity guarantees to all citizens. So he kind of spells it out there. To a nation. Any shootings in North Dakota? Fargo? Let's see. Maine? No. Unarmed? African American? Well, let folks, you know my position on this. He punched the officer and the officer shot him. And of course, the only witness to that is the officer, I guess. Any video on it? Okay. The one problem I had with this, ladies and gentlemen, with Colin Kaepernick was that he only took a knee. To be quite frank. And to draw attention, and the reality is the attention was given, the attention's given to him. And look, I know that some of you see it differently. That's fine with me. I'm not trying to convince you. But it wasn't the nation that did what happened to Castile. There were 2 officers involved. It wasn't the nation. You know, the implication that I'm protesting the nation implies that there is some institutional law, racism, that prevailed there in Baton Rouge that resulted in this, or in Ferguson for that matter. And I'm sorry, but Colin Kaepernick was in error, in my view. Nevertheless, he did that. He took the knee when theoretically he could have really utilized his bully pulpit. At any given time, the microphone was going to be shoved in his face at any given time, and that is where you articulate. That is where you not only show, bring awareness, but you rally the troops. You blow the bugle. You say, here is what I'm going to do about it. And I didn't see that. There's been quiet. And now the next thing we hear is Colin Kaepernick suing the NFL for his job back. Now, I hate to sound critical here, ladies and gentlemen. It's certainly within, that is certainly within his, and he certainly has the right to do that. And I don't doubt that maybe he should, to be quite frank. But that should not be the story, Colin. the play you need to call is the play that follows up on why you took a knee in the first place. Really. Especially now. Especially now. Because that's what people are waiting for, and we still have not heard from it outside of this. And I know that there are those who are going to think I'm being critical, and just for being critical sake, I'm not. I'm asking, really. Maybe I should put it in the form of that. Hey, Colin, brother, I know that you might be new to the historical process of protest and the strategies therein. I don't doubt, however, that because you've had some time off, that maybe, just maybe, you will have listened to this show, or maybe even talk to some individuals like Reverend Jackson, or any number of individuals who know something about protest, and hopefully you've learned, okay, that what worked then and what didn't work, but at least the strategy. I must tell you, sir, taking a knee and marching doesn't work. That's something that was effective then, and it was only effective then because the assembly of large numbers of African Americans was in itself unusual and threatening, you know, especially downtown Montgomery or Birmingham. So now it's going to take some other strategy, some kind of millennial, some new and different kind of thing here that says, okay, here's what we're going to do about it. We're not just going to take the knee here. We're not just going to do that. And that is sorely needed. It's sorely needed. I did not expect this. I mean, as a first volley, should I say, into activism, into your public activism, you know. So we will sue the NFL so that you can get your job back. There were even some who, and I disagree. I think King with the Black Lives Matter was saying he was boycotting the NFL because Colin didn't have a job, and I took issue with that. It's not about him. Activism is not about that. You see a good fight, you get in it. My daddy always told me. And it's not about whether something happens to you once you get in it. It's about whether you win the fight. And the fight, Colin, is not with the NFL. Colin. The fight, Colin, is not with the nation. The fight, Colin, is with those individuals who are currently on the police force, who shouldn't be, who are already predisposed to have their own bigotries and prejudices toward men who don't look like them, or men who look like them but act like us. Oh yeah, you've got that too. And correcting it before it happens. It's not unusual either, Colin. Maybe you should read about this situation that happened back in 1983. 23-year-old young African-American man, body was found draped over electrical poles. Well, electrical lines. He was, he was brutally beaten. And now, 5 individuals are now being charged. All Caucasian, 2 of which were in law enforcement. Yeah, you heard me right. This happened in 1983. Spalding County, Georgia Sheriff Darrell Dix announced the charges, including against 2 people who worked in law enforcement and allegedly helped to cover up this deed here. So, yeah, Colin, it has been going on a while, but it has not been America doing it. It has been individuals on police forces and others, and you've got to take it to them. See, when you blame the entire country for something that happens in Ferguson or in Baton Rouge or in Dallas, then what you do is you're doing the same thing that they're doing by generalizing and developing some bigotries that really heretofore doesn't exist. You're just, the protests of those individuals taking a knee and those in the audience, all of it's protest. Those booing the African Americans taking a knee and those taking a knee. However, never once let it be said that there's not something you can do with your fame and fortune. And that is, go after those individuals who wronged you directly. It's not that many. It really isn't, comparatively speaking. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that Frankie Gephardt, 59 years old, Bill Moore, 58, were charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and concealing a body. Lamar Bond, a Milner Police Department employee, and Sandra Bond, 58, were charged with obstruction. Gregory Hoffman, a detention officer with the Spalding County Sheriff's Office, was charged with obstruction and violation of oath. Now, let me just tell you what happened here, Colin. The Sheriff Dix, was elected. Darrell Dix was elected. Now, had he not been elected, that this 1983, should I say, murder could have been just continued to go under the radar, but that's not what happened in Spalding County, Georgia. Citizens got out, and they elected a sheriff that would not go with the status quo and the good old boys. And let me just tell you, he filed charges, filed it with a quickness. Of course, that was also thanks to media, by the way, playing a part, local newspaper, television, radio. The family right now, Timothy Coggin's parents are deceased, but his sister was quite delighted. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, what brought this to the forefront were those citizens in Spalding electing the right man to do the just job. That's how you do it. You don't take no knee. We'll be back.